Poor black girl gives sandwich to millionaire in disguise. He shows up in a Rolls-Royce and changes her life forever. Please like, share, and subscribe, and watch till the end. It was a hot afternoon in the small dusty streets of Santa Rosa, a forgotten corner of the big city where rich people never came. The houses were made from broken bricks, some with plastic for windows. The air always smelled of smoke and sweat. And in the middle of it all lived a 12-year-old girl named Luciana Ribeiro. Luciana was dark-skinned, with eyes that looked like they could see through lies. Her hair was thick and tied with pink plastic beads. She wore her old-school uniform every day, even though the color had faded to almost gray. Her shoes had holes, and she had to stuff them with tissue paper so they wouldn't hurt her toes. She lived with her grandmother, Mama Dita, who was very old and always coughing. They had no TV, no proper bed, and no fridge. They barely had enough to eat. But Luciana didn't complain. She just smiled, held her grandmother's wrinkled hand and said, "We'll be okay, Mama. We have each other." That day, Luciana walked home from school, her stomach empty. The teacher had given her a small sandwich for helping clean the board, just a dry slice of bread with a little peanut butter. It wasn't much, but to Luciana, it was gold. She placed the sandwich gently into a piece of brown paper and held it close to her chest. As she walked past a pile of old tires near the corner store, she saw a man sitting on the ground. He had a long beard, dirty clothes, and no shoes. His hands were dark with dirt, and his face looked tired, like someone who hadn't eaten in days. People passed him like he was invisible. Some laughed at him. One boy even kicked a stone toward him and shouted, "Get a job, you lazy dog." Luciana stopped walking. She looked at the sandwich in her hand. Then she looked at the man. Slowly, she walked over and sat beside him on the sidewalk. "Hi," she said quietly. The man didn't reply at first. Luciana opened the paper and broke the sandwich in two. "You can have half," she said. "I already had a big lunch anyway." She was lying. She hadn't eaten since breakfast, which was just boiled water and salt. The man looked at her, surprised. "Want to give me that?" he asked in a tired voice. Luciana smiled. "It's not much. But peanut butter is strong. It fills your belly." He took the sandwich with shaking hands. "Thank you," he said. Luciana nodded. "My name is Luciana. What's yours?" The man stared at her for a long time before answering. "Eduardo," he said slowly. "My name is Eduardo." "Nice to meet you, Eduardo," Luciana replied. "I hope things get better for you." Then she stood up and walked away. She didn't know that man had secretly followed her with his eyes until she disappeared into her small house down the street. She didn't know that he wasn't a homeless man at all. She didn't know she had just shared a sandwich with Eduardo Vasconcelos, one of the richest men in the country, who was secretly walking the streets in disguise to test people's hearts. 3 days later, Luciana sat outside the house, holding her grandmother's hand as they looked up at the sky. "We'll get your medicine soon, Mama," Luciana whispered. "Maybe I can wash more cars tomorrow for money." Mama Dita smiled weakly. "You are my blessing." Just then, something strange happened. A shiny black Rolls-Royce with tinted windows slowly rolled into their street. All the children stopped playing. All the mothers peeked from windows. Even the dogs stopped barking. No one ever saw cars like that here. Luciana's mouth dropped open. She had never seen anything so shiny. The car stopped right in front of their house. The door opened. A tall man in a gray suit stepped out. He wore sunglasses and shiny shoes. Everyone watched from behind curtains. "Excuse me," he said politely, looking around. "Is this where I can find Miss Luciana Ribeiro?" Luciana stood, confused. "I'm Luciana," she said carefully. The man smiled and removed his glasses. "My name is Marcus Silva. I work for Eduardo Vasconcelos." Luciana blinked. "Who?" Marcus nodded. "Eduardo Vasconcelos. You may remember giving him half a sandwich 3 days ago." Luciana's heart skipped. She gasped. "The homeless man?" "He wasn't homeless," Marcus replied. "Mr. Vasconcelos was testing the hearts of strangers. You passed." Everyone on the street whispered and stared. Marcus knelt so he was eye level with her. Mr. Vasconcelos was so moved by your kindness, he sent me to find you. He wants to meet you again. He also wants to help you. Luciana stepped back. Why? Because good people deserve good things, Marcus said kindly. Your small sandwich meant more to him than you can imagine. Mama Dita, weak but curious, asked from the chair, What do you want with my granddaughter? Marcus turned to her with respect. Ma'am, my boss wants to help you too. He'll cover your medical bills. You won't have to worry about anything. Luciana's hands shook. It was too much. Too fast. Was it a trick? Was this real? Luciana sat in the back of the Rolls-Royce, her eyes wide like a baby's. Everything smelled like leather and flowers. There was cold water in glass bottles. The seats were soft like cake. Marcus looked at her kindly. You all right? She nodded, still too shocked to speak. The car drove through parts of the city she had never seen before. Tall buildings, fountains, and people walking fancy dogs. They finally pulled up to a tall golden gate. Inside was a huge white mansion with palm trees and a giant fountain that sprayed water like in the movies. This is Mr. Vasconcelos' house, Marcus said. Luciana felt like a mouse in a castle. Eduardo Vasconcelos stood at the entrance of the mansion, no longer in rags. He wore a white shirt, gray pants, and a warm smile. Luciana, he said gently, thank you for feeding me when I had nothing. Luciana looked down. It was just a sandwich. It was everything, Eduardo said, his voice soft. You didn't know who I was. But you still cared. That means you're someone special. Luciana swallowed hard. Eduardo took her hand. I have something to show you. He took her to a room filled with books and paintings. From now on, I will take care of your grandmother's health. She will get the best doctors. And you will go to the best school in the city. Luciana gasped. You don't have to. I don't deserve. You deserve it more than anyone I've met in years, Eduardo interrupted. But only if you accept. Luciana turned to Marcus, then looked back at Eduardo. Why me? She whispered. Because the world needs more people like you, Eduardo said. And just like that, Luciana's life began to change. The next morning, Luciana woke up in a bed so soft she thought she was floating on clouds. White curtains danced in the breeze from the large window beside her. She rubbed her eyes and looked around the room, the gold-framed mirror, the bookshelf with shiny hardcovers, and a soft pink rug under her feet. It wasn't a dream. She was really inside Eduardo Vasconcelos' mansion. She slowly stepped out of bed and walked to the door. Outside, a woman dressed in white greeted her. Good morning, Miss Luciana. I'm Clara. Mr. Vasconcelos asked me to take care of you. Luciana shyly smiled. I don't need much. I just want to call my grandmother. Clara bowed her head politely and handed her a phone. She's already awake and doing fine. The doctor arrived early this morning. She's asking about you. Luciana's hands trembled as she held the phone. Meanwhile, back at Santa Rosa, Mama Dita sat on a real hospital bed for the first time in her life. A kind nurse checked her blood pressure while a man in a white coat adjusted the medicine beside her. I told you she's special, she said proudly. That girl is the light God left for me. The doctor smiled. Well, thanks to that light, you're going to be just fine, Mama Dita. Mama Dita touched her chest and whispered, Thank you, Lord. Luciana finished speaking with her grandmother and wiped a tear from her eye. Then she followed Clara downstairs to a grand dining room where Eduardo was waiting. The table was covered in fruits, eggs, sausages, and pancakes, more food than Luciana had seen in her entire life. She sat quietly, not knowing what to touch. Eduardo smiled. Eat, Luciana. This is your home now, if you want it. Luciana blinked. Home. He nodded. I know it's a lot, but I mean it. She whispered, I've never been to a home like this. You deserve it, Eduardo said. But before anything else, tell me one thing. Luciana looked up. What do you want most in the world? Luciana thought for a long time. Her fingers tapped lightly on the edge of her plate. Then she said, I want to become a doctor, like the one who gave my grandmother medicine. Eduardo leaned back, surprised. You don't want fancy clothes or jewelry? Luciana shook her head. I want to help people. Just like you helped me. Eduardo's eyes glistened. Then let's get to work. For the first time in her life, Luciana stepped into Riverside International Academy, a private school with fountains at the entrance, glass walls, and green lawns trimmed like a golf course. The students wore sharp uniforms with golden embroidery. The halls smelled of books and perfume. Some students whispered when they saw her. Who's the new girl? She came in a Rolls-Royce. She doesn't look rich. Luciana heard them. She kept her head high anyway. A girl with curly brown hair walked up to her. Hi, I'm Eva. Want me to show you around? Luciana smiled. Yes, please. Eva turned to the others and said boldly, She's with me. From that moment, Luciana made her first real friend. But not everyone was kind. In her third week, Luciana walked into the girls' bathroom and overheard two girls whispering. I heard she used to live in the slums. She probably stole that scholarship. She'll never fit in. Luciana froze. Her throat tightened. That night, she cried alone in her room at the mansion. Eduardo knocked softly and entered. He found her with her pillow soaked in tears. What happened? He asked gently. Luciana sniffed. They say I don't belong. That I'm just a charity case. Eduardo knelt beside her. Do you know what makes a diamond? She shook her head. Pressure. And time. That's how diamonds are made. Luciana looked into his kind eyes. You, Luciana, are becoming a diamond. The next day, Eduardo took Luciana on a ride in the Rolls-Royce again. This time, they stopped at a children's hospital. I thought you wanted to help people, he said. Luciana blinked. We're here too? Eduardo handed her a small white coat. She looked at it. It said, Luciana Ribeiro, Junior Volunteer. Eduardo smiled. Let's get started, doctor. Inside the hospital, Luciana met kids her age. Some sick, some in wheelchairs, some without hair. She talked with them, played games, and helped hand out snacks. One little girl hugged her and whispered, You look like me. Luciana hugged her back. That means you're beautiful. That night, Eduardo gave her a hug and said, You changed more lives today than I did all year. Meanwhile, someone was watching. Far across the city, in a tall building with glass walls, a man sat in a dark room. His name was Carlos Vieira, a business rival of Eduardo Vasconcelos. He watched the news on his screen. Richest man Eduardo Vasconcelos adopts poor girl, promises to fund dreams. Carlos sneered. He's growing too soft. Too generous. The girl, I want to know everything about her. He turned to his assistant. Dig up her past. I want to know her weakness. Weeks passed. Luciana grew more confident. Her math improved. Her English sharpened. She even gave a speech during a school assembly, and the entire hall clapped. Eduardo gave her a small desk beside his own in his home office. She started helping with his charity ideas. She suggested things the adults hadn't even thought of. She's got the heart of a leader, Eduardo told Marcus one evening. Marcus nodded. She's going to go far. But then, the past came knocking. One morning, as Luciana stepped outside the mansion, she saw a familiar face. It was Mr. Rubin, the butcher from Santa Rosa. The same one who once refused to give her bones for soup. He looked awkward and nervous. Luciana, is that really you? She nodded slowly. I heard what you've become. I just wanted to say I'm proud. Luciana smiled gently. Thank you. Then he added something strange. But I hope you don't forget where you came from. Because the higher you rise, the more people will want to pull you down. Luciana blinked. What do you mean? He just shook his head and walked away. Luciana sat on the balcony, legs swinging gently, eyes staring far into the orange evening sky. The air smelled of roses from the garden below, but her heart was heavy. The words of Mr. Rubin, the old butcher from Santa Rosa, would not leave her mind. The higher you rise, the more people will want to pull you down. Why did he say that? What did he mean? Inside the Vasconcelos mansion, the lights flickered on as the sun dipped low. Eduardo had just returned from a long meeting. He looked tired but smiled when he saw Luciana. She quickly tucked her worries away and ran to greet him. He handed her a small wrapped box. "A gift?" she asked, eyes wide. He nodded. "Open it." Inside was a shiny silver necklace with a tiny peanut butter sandwich charm. "It's silly, I know," he chuckled. "But I wanted you to remember where all this started." Luciana laughed softly and hugged him. "It's perfect." But even as she smiled, a strange car was parked a few streets away. Inside the black car, a man watched the mansion with binoculars. Carlos Vieira. He held a folder filled with papers. His assistant handed him a photo. It was blurry but clear enough. Luciana and Eduardo, smiling. Carlos leaned back and smirked. "So this is the girl. The little street angel who now lives like a queen. Let's see how clean her past really is." The next day, Luciana arrived at school like always. Eva ran to her and hugged her tightly. "Guess what?" Eva said, grinning. "You've been chosen to represent the school in the National Youth Speech Competition." Luciana blinked. "Me? Are you serious?" "Completely." Eva laughed. "You'll be speaking in front of 1,000 people." Luciana felt her heart skip. Excitement and fear bubbled in her chest. That night, she stood in front of a mirror, practicing her speech. Eduardo clapped every time she finished. "You're not just smart," he said. "You speak from the heart. That's your real power." But trouble was slowly creeping closer. A few days later, a tabloid article appeared on a gossip blog. "From the gutter to the gold. Who is Luciana Ribeiro really?" The headline screamed in red. The article was cruel. It showed an old picture of Luciana in dirty clothes, carrying a plastic bag through muddy streets. It called her names. Said she tricked Eduardo. That she only wanted money and fame. Luciana saw it on Eva's phone. She froze. The ground under her seemed to melt. Eva turned to her quickly. "Don't listen to this garbage. It's all lies." But Luciana felt like she couldn't breathe. Eyes around the school were already turning. Whispers were already starting again. At home, Eduardo called an emergency meeting. "I know who's behind this," he said. "Carlos Vieira. He's trying to hurt me by hurting you." Luciana looked down. "Maybe he's right. Maybe I don't belong here. I was just a girl from Santa Rosa. I never asked to be famous." Eduardo knelt beside her. "And I was once a boy with no shoes. I became who I am because someone gave me a chance. Just like I gave you." "But now people hate me," she said. "No," he replied gently. "They fear your light. That's why they throw darkness." Luciana didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window, staring at the stars. She remembered her mother's face, though it was faint in her mind now. She whispered, "Mama, what should I do?" And in her heart, she heard something soft. "Shine anyway." So the next morning, Luciana walked into school with her head held high. During lunch, someone left a peanut butter sandwich on her desk with a mean note that said, "Maybe you should give this back to the street where you belong." She picked it up quietly and walked to the middle of the cafeteria. Everyone stared. She lifted the sandwich high and said, "This sandwich changed my life. I gave it out of love, not for anything in return. If anyone thinks kindness is a weakness, then I feel sorry for you." Silence. Then Eva stood up and clapped. Then others did too. Soon, the whole cafeteria echoed with applause. Luciana smiled through her tears. She had found her voice again. But Carlos was not done. He started spreading fake rumors about Eduardo too, saying the Vasconcelos Foundation was built on dirty money. He even planted a spy inside Eduardo's company. Luciana, now part of the office and trusted by Eduardo, began to notice things. Some papers weren't matching. Some donations were being miscounted. She began secretly keeping notes. She used color-coded stickers on folders Eduardo never looked at. She started comparing signatures, dates, and emails. And soon, a pattern appeared. It wasn't Eduardo. It was Ricardo, Eduardo's son. Luciana felt her chest tighten. Ricardo had always been quiet around her. Cold even. He never joined family dinners or charity events. One night, she saw him in the hallway whispering to someone on the phone. She heard him say, "Don't worry. The girl is just a puppet." She has no idea what's happening. Luciana stood frozen in the shadows. She knew now. She wasn't just fighting lies from strangers. The danger was inside the house. The next day, she gathered every piece of proof she had. She wanted to tell Eduardo, but how could she? This was his son. His only child. Would he believe her? But then something happened that forced her hand. One of Eduardo's orphanage projects was suddenly shut down. A home for 120 children. Because someone had stolen the funds. Eduardo was devastated. Luciana couldn't wait any longer. She walked into his study and placed the file on his desk. Eduardo opened it slowly. His hands trembled as he read the numbers, the names, the secret bank accounts. His eyes filled with tears. Then Luciana said quietly, "I'm sorry." Eduardo closed the file and sat back. His face looked 10 years older. He whispered, "I should have seen this. I wanted to believe my son was good." Luciana touched his hand. Being a father means hope. That's not weakness. That night, Eduardo called Ricardo to a family meeting. Luciana sat quietly in the corner. Eduardo placed the file in front of his son. "Do you have anything to say?" he asked. Ricardo tried to smile. "What is this? Some kind of joke?" Luciana stood. "It's not a joke. I saw you. Heard you. I followed the money." Ricardo's eyes turned cold. "You little rat. You think you're smarter than me?" Eduardo stood slowly. "She's smarter, kinder, and stronger than you'll ever be." Ricardo threw the chair and stormed out. That night he left the house. Eduardo pressed charges. The company was shaken, but Luciana stayed strong beside him. Weeks passed. The orphanage reopened. The money was restored. Eduardo gave a press conference, thanking Luciana for her courage. And finally, her big day came. The National Youth Speech Competition. She walked onto the big stage, microphone in front of her, bright lights blinding. She took a deep breath and began. "I once lived in a place where people slept hungry. Where dreams were small because life was hard. But one day, I gave a sandwich to a man who looked hungry. I didn't know he was a billionaire. I only knew he looked like he needed kindness." She told her story. And when she finished, the crowd gave a standing ovation. Tears rolled down Eduardo's face. From the shadows, Carlos Vieira watched the screen. He turned it off. "She's stronger than I thought." Then he laughed. "But I'm not done yet." 5 years passed like a blink. Luciana was no longer the shy girl with dust on her feet. She had become a confident young woman with her own voice and her own dreams. She graduated from the best university in the country, standing tall on the stage in her bright red gown while the crowd cheered. Eduardo stood among them, clapping with tears in his eyes. He wasn't just proud, he was amazed. Luciana had started her own foundation, just like Eduardo once did. She named it the Sandwich Hope. It helped children who lived on the streets, just like she once had. Every week, she visited shelters and handed out peanut butter sandwiches, not for fame, not for praise, but because it reminded her that something small could become something big. She and Eva were still close, almost like sisters. Eva had become a children's nurse, always telling the kids stories about the girl who gave a sandwich to a stranger and ended up changing her whole life. Luciana never got tired of hearing Eva talk. But not everyone was happy. Ricardo, Eduardo's son, was now in another country. After Eduardo pressed charges, Ricardo had been found guilty of fraud and theft. But Eduardo asked the court to let him go on one condition. He must never return unless he was truly changed. Ricardo left with anger in his heart, but even now, Luciana sometimes thought about him. Could he ever come back? Could he ever become better? Carlos Vieira, the man who once tried to ruin Eduardo and Luciana, had disappeared after his lies were exposed. Nobody knew where he went. Some said he ran to another country. Others believed he stayed nearby, waiting, watching. Luciana no longer feared him, but sometimes, when she saw a strange car outside the mansion, her heart skipped just a little. One cloudy evening, something unexpected happened. A knock came at the gate. The guards let in a man in an old suit, holding a small leather bag. His beard was gray, and his back was bent. He asked to see Luciana. She came out unsure. The man looked into her eyes. "Do you remember me?" Luciana stared, confused. Then he said, "You gave me a sandwich. 10 years ago. Santa Rosa. Behind the market." Her breath caught. The memory came rushing back. The other man, not Eduardo, the one who had once been dirty, broken, and forgotten. The very first man she ever gave a sandwich to. "You still remember?" she whispered. He nodded. "That sandwich saved me. I was going to end my life that day. But your kindness stopped me. I cleaned up. I started helping others. And now, I run a small shelter outside the city. I tell your story every week. I tell them, kindness is louder than pain." Luciana hugged him. She gave him a check that night. More than enough to rebuild his shelter. As the sun set, Luciana stood on her balcony, just like she used to. Eduardo joined her, sipping tea. "You've changed so many lives," he said. Luciana smiled. "You started it." He laughed. "No. You did. With a sandwich." They sat in silence. Then Eduardo turned to her and said, "There's something else I need to tell you." Luciana looked up. "I want you to take over my foundation. All of it. The business, the staff, everything. I'm retiring." Luciana froze. "I can't." "You can," he said. "You were born for this." Tears filled her eyes. As the stars blinked above, she knew this was only the beginning. Her journey wasn't over. Far away, in a dim room, Ricardo stared at an old photo of Luciana in a newspaper. He whispered, "One day, I'll return." But whether he came back in peace or with fire, only time would tell. And somewhere in the city, a little girl picked up a sandwich and walked toward a stranger who looked hungry. And so, it began again. Thank you so much for watching till the end. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or even made you shed a tear, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment below. What would you do if a billionaire showed up at your door because of a simple act of kindness? Your support helps us keep telling powerful stories that reach deep into the heart. Until next time, remember, one small act of kindness can change everything. Thank you for watching.